I believe that the nation has shifted its opinion on abortions since 1973. And maybe it's because with technology and with the fact that sonograms can now show us the color of a baby's eyes and what it's going to look like inside the mom's womb at as early as like 3 months, that we're really believing and knowing that it really is a baby. It's not this little fetus, this little mushy thing. It's really a baby. And when you see that sonogram and you see that baby inside the womb, you got to say to yourself, how can I call this anything else but life? And I think that's probably one of the reasons why throughout the years public opinion has truly shifted on abortion. A decade ago, back in 2001, there was a poll taken wherein 40% of the respondents identified themselves as being pro-life, while 49% identified themselves as being pro-choice. Well, in 2005, another poll was taken. There was little movement toward the pro-life position. 42% said they're pro-life, while 52% said they're pro-choice. But for some reason, in 2006, the number grew, 45 to 47. And in 2008, the numbers were 46 to 48. Now, maybe that's because of the prevalence of all of these sonograms. And today, when your daughter or your son goes in with his wife for the sonogram, the grandparents and great-grandparents go too. It didn't happen a decade ago. But oh my gosh, it's a family thing because we can't wait to see what the baby is, and we're told to cover our eyes at that one moment if you don't want to know what the sex of the baby is. Believe me, I couldn't tell anyway, but I've gone twice and had to close my eyes twice, and I think because the families involved in this whole sonogram with the birth of the baby, that all of our eyes are beginning to light up and say, wow, that really is a life. In just 3 months' time, it's a real baby. In May 2009, 51% of those polled identified themselves as being pro-life, where only 42% responded that they were pro-choice. Now, the latest poll I could find on the subject was conducted in January of this year, just a couple of months ago, and it was consistent with the 2009 poll. Half the respondents, pardon me, said they were pro-life. The numbers become even more definitive when it comes to public funding or taxpayer monies going towards the funding of abortions, even indirectly. This is a very real and timely debate as we struggle today to tackle our enormous deficit and debt, which, Mr. Speaker, if we don't get under control, will reshape this country in a way that I don't believe will allow our children to have at least an equal opportunity as us, if not to have a better opportunity as us. But that's a debate for another day on the debt and deficit. When I first got here in September of 2005, the very first person I wanted to meet was Henry Hyde of Illinois, because he was my hero. See, after Roe v. Wade, people at my kitchen table and in my family were talking about money, federal money being used for abortion. And my mom and dad were mad, and shoot, even I was mad. And Henry Hyde was mad too, and in 1976, he offered the Hyde Amendment. And it simply said that federal taxpayer dollars were barred from funding abortion, period, case closed. And that amendment has been consistent with the policy of this House ever since. So I wanted to meet that hero, that gentleman. And when you walk into my office, you see a picture of he and I on the last day that he served in this House. Of all the people that I've ever met He is truly my hero. Anyway, every year we debate this, and even in the health care bill, it was a hotly contested issue. And after the bill was voted on, the president had an executive order that at this point still stops the federal funding of abortion in health care, we believe. But that's a very fragile piece of paper, and I really believe this body needs to recodify in the health care bill that no money will ever be spent for abortion, and no insurance policies will have any federal dollars attached to it that would allow for abortions to occur. But that's something I believe we have to work on this year, Mr. Speaker. And you know, even today, in this body, as we voted on the CR, the issue of abortion was there. Do we put it in the CR and stop the federal funding of abortion or not? You know, we have a lot of pro-life leaders in the House, and they've looked at the budget very, very shrewdly, and they've determined that if we don't put these protections in place, federal funding will slip into the budget in the future. And that's why they are so adamant about putting out bills and provisions in CRs that would stop federal funding of abortion. And one of the latest initiatives to receive a full vote in the House was an amendment introduced by my good friend from Indiana, Mr. Pence, that would prohibit federal funding for Planned Parenthood, which happens to be the largest abortion provider in the country. Now, I know what you're going to say. Well, they have a separate wall, and they're really only using the money for women's health issues. They're not using it for abortion, but we know money is fungible. And we know in a building, you can't really dissect how much energy costs are going to one side of the building and how much are going to the other. So we know that while, the actual procedure isn't using federal money, we know that the building is. And so it's fungible, and it's slipping through. But a few weeks ago when we had the CR, his amendment received, I think, 239 votes out of this body that said no, Planned Parenthood shouldn't receive the money. And you know, Mr. Speaker, maybe it's a bigger debate than just the abortion issue, because, you know, what we saw last fall was a sting operation that showed in some cases abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood clinics across the country were actually talking about or ignoring the fact that people were coming in about human trafficking and saying they wanted a human trafficking issue, and if the underage girl got pregnant, how could they get an abortion? And the gal at the desk didn't seem to think there was a problem with that conversation. Now, I'm not saying that Planned Parenthood International condones it, and I'm sure that they don't. But I'm saying that there were clinics that this conversation occurred. I know in my own hometown in Cincinnati, Ohio, where in 2 cases there were young girls that went to the Planned Parenthood clinic on Auburn Avenue, and both told the abortion provider they were underage and they were pregnant, one by her father, one by a coach. The father's now in jail. And the situation with the parents were they didn't know the coach took her to the abortion clinic. He signed the document that said, "Oh, I'm the legal guardian," and it wasn't until later when she went to the doctor on another issue that the doctor said, "Well, when did your daughter have an abortion?" that this whole thing exploded. And right now it's in court. They're going after the coach, and they're trying to go after Planned Parenthood because the girl said, "I'm 15." So maybe Planned Parenthood shouldn't have our money if they're not careful stewards about people that are coming through their doors. Because a 15-year-old that's pregnant, well, I think that's called statutory rape, no matter who the father was. And if a girl comes in at 15, we should be asking questions. How did you get pregnant? Who was the father? What happened? Because that's breaking the law. So above the fact that we have a looming deficit and a looming debt, above the fact that I believe that money is fungible with Planned Parenthood, above the fact that in some cases they have people that go into clinics and they have a lady or a guy at the desk that doesn't understand what human trafficking is all about. Maybe they shouldn't have the money because when it's right in their eye, they simply choose to ignore the issue. Mr. Speaker, there are a lot of pro-life people in America, and there are a lot of pro-life people in this House, and I think it is time that we discuss this issue more openly, because people of this nation understand that all life is precious, including the life of the unborn. They also understand that our money comes from taxpayers, and taxpayers expect us to do the right things with their money. And that means protecting life at all costs. You know, one of the things that I want to say before I wrap up, and we talk about polling, is that there have been multiple polls conducted on the subject within the last year of federal funds and abortion. Two that I want to highlight were conducted by CNN in Quinnipiac. Now, CNN is hardly a right-wing organization, but the own CNN poll showed that 60% of Americans oppose public monies going to fund abortion. That's well over a majority. The Quinnipiac polls show 72% oppose it. Wow, that's a lot of Americans. And I believe that we need to do the right thing and end the public funding of abortion, whether it's in the health care bill, any bill that comes here, or any monies that go overseas. Like the feminists, the pro-life women of the past, pro-life women today simply believe that we are all afforded the right to life. It is not a gift from our government. It is a gift from our Lord. He is the one that has allowed us to stand here in America and across the world. He is the one that has said to us, He wants us to be in His image and His likeness. It is our Lord that wants us to be the best person we can be. And if we are to be the best person we can be, we have to ensure that each other has that same chance. Whether it's a little seed in a womb that is 20 minutes old, or it's an elderly person in a nursing home. All of us are equal in the Lord's eyes. All of us have the right to life. And so I'm proud to stand here today, like my sisters before me, like Elizabeth Cady Stanton, like Susan B. Anthony, and yes, Alice Paul, and say, enough's enough. Women's rights are women's rights. And if a woman has rights, those rights are the child's rights, because everybody has the right to life.